Hi there, we're back with a bang this Monday as we serve up a triple header of talking points in the shape of an FA Cup roundup, a close look at some blockbuster transfer news and a look ahead to the Premier League's midweek fixtures. Paddy Von Bear will give you some fantasy pointers on the latter fixtures, while journalist Darren Lewis joins me for the rest. So here's the lineup. Today we'll be talking, well, cups and downs, I'm going to call it. They're a promising arrival for one and a depressing cup exit for the other. Some mind-blowing transfer rumours involving Real Madrid and Manchester City, and the ways the likes of Walcott and Stoke City can boost your fantasy scores. First, though, here as ever is Michelle Holland to set out our social media agenda. What is it then?
Can I just cast our minds back and just say, I don't think there are going to be any upsets this weekend, John. Famous last words that. And perhaps the biggest surprise of the weekend was Liverpool's loss to West Brom, which prompted John to ask on Twitter, what was that? So pretty much what everyone else was thinking. Let us know your thoughts on that, because we are back on Facebook Live. Plus, with 2 days to go in the transfer window, what's going on there? Have your say on any last-minute deals to be done and some hefty names being linked with heftier clubs.
Hefty indeed. Right, let's get straight into it, shall we? Not the transfers, but a look back at the weekend's FA Cup fourth round action. I'll be honest, I wasn't that blown away by the draw initially. I didn't expect there to be too much to talk about. I was wrong. It turned out to be incident-packed. Let's have a quick look then at those results there. Obviously kicking off with an easy win for Manchester United. These are selected results involving the Premier League clubs, but obviously the big talking point would have been what happened to Liverpool, the big exit there. Now, contrasting fortunes for Liverpool and Manchester United. Let's start off with that one then. Much was made of the role VAR played in Liverpool's first home defeat of the season, and their first in 9 months. There you are, video nasty from one of the papers, a step to VAR from another one there. But the TV official, and actually those on the pitch, to be honest, got the decisions right, even if they took way too long. And they had the anti-tech tribe tut-tutting and muttering darkly about the game being ruined forever. Credit to West Brom and to Jay Rodriguez in particular, but the real talking point for me was Liverpool's second straight failure against supposedly weaker opposition following that win over Manchester City. Now, I wouldn't jump straight into an attack on Simon Mignolet or the defence, though. I think Jurgen Klopp's approach actually is the problem. They have to be hyper-energetic at times, and if they don't maintain those standards, that lets the other team have a right go at the defence and the goalkeeper, and that's where the problems come from. So this is my question for you. Is it a mental thing or is it systemic? I'd say the latter. I think there are certain games that need to be won ugly, as Liverpool showed they could do at times towards the end of last season. Now, I'd welcome your comments, and in fact, Michelle's already got a few to share with us, but we'll do that in a moment. First up, Manchester United. As I expected, and I told you on Friday, Mourinho's men emerged easily victorious at Yeovil, and Alexis Sanchez's debut was really what we were talking about after that. So there you go, then he gets the job done. How depressing, though, was it to see a story in the online edition of British tabloid The Star saying Sanchez is already causing unrest in the Old Trafford dressing room? What? Well, I clicked on it, only to find it was repeating something that had been published a couple of days earlier in a Spanish publication called Don Balón. And in that Don Balón, they basically explained that he's now the fourth highest earner in world football, and then they went on to say that the likes of De Gea, Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Pogba are unhappy about it in the dressing room. There were no quotes, nothing actually attributable to sources, just hearsay. So in a way, just the sort of thing to further inflame United fans who think the media, or parts of it, have an agenda against them. Right, Michelle?
Yeah, you think, John. Let's bring up your tweet now, actually, that highlights that Daily Star article. And it seems that instead of anger, you almost hear resignation coming from the fans. Like this tweet from Soccer Lens, who says simply, been used to it for decades now. And likewise, Bantalat responds with, we are used to it, John. And now, sit tight, United fans. We're going to talk about Liverpool now as we ponder what went wrong. Well, Mohamed has a clear idea and calls out both the defence and midfield, unlike Amberish, who, he starts this with absolutely no idea, sir. Maybe our system is such we are weird against counter-attacking teams. Hardick's answer, well, he reckons perhaps there wasn't enough pressure on Liverpool, and Gopalang lays the blame squarely on Klopp's shoulders.
I like the sir. And I like the weird even more. Right, thank you very much, Michelle. So some still blaming the defence, others Klopp. I was stunned to hear somebody ranting on a BBC radio phone-in Saturday night saying Klopp has to go. What a difference a week or so makes. Amazing, really. Let's get the thoughts now of Mirror football writer Darren Lewis for the first time today. He joins us from the UK. Darren, lovely to see you as ever. Which set of fans then are the hardest done by here? Liverpool's or United's?
Well, I would say Liverpool's, because I think as far as Man United are concerned, I never like to come onto shows and disparage the content of any of my rivals in the media, but I would not say that Don Ballon, a publication that specialises in speculation, none of which ever is substantive, could be representative of the English press. We do take a lot of stick here in England for some of the stuff that we write, and some fans do take issue with it. But it is generally based, has a basis. In fact, my last story, transfer story last week for the Daily Mirror, was all about Chelsea's interest in Olivier Giroud, which we now know to be true and could yet be pursued if the deal for Edin Dzeko breaks down, as we think it is in danger of doing. But essentially what we do here in England is we talk to people and we try to find out the guts behind the story. So yeah. I don't think Dumbledore's representative of us, but I do think that the disaffection at Manchester United, listen, in any group situation, if somebody comes along after you've been doing all the hard work and says, I think I'll come in on a huge amount of wages, it would cause problems. But I was at Antonio Conte's press conference last week, and he said, when you have players who score 30, 40, 50 goals, if a player comes to me and says, I want more money, I would say to him, can you do what he does?
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, good point. Good point. Darren, let's talk about Pep Guardiola right now. Furious, those tackles from Cardiff's Joe Bennett on Leroy Sané and Brahim Diaz. His call for protection actually received some, frankly, snarky coverage at times, like this headline in the Mail here, "Leave my artists alone." Come on, just accept that he wants them to play beautiful football. They can't help themselves, can they? In case it escaped any of you, City were excellent. Cardiff manager Neil Warnock, his usual unlikable self. And for City, the quadruple is still on, despite what Pep Guardiola is saying. Spurs, remember, came close to an exit against Newport County, only for Harry Kane to spare their blushes, but also to give them a very much unwanted Wembley replay. They really could do without that. We'll talk a bit more about Mauricio Pochettino in just a short while. But of course, the London club that did get booted out of this competition were West Ham. Absolutely predictably so. Not a surprise in any way. As Russ Wiseman told us on Friday's show, Wigan started as favourites for this, and the Hammers really were second best. As the papers pointed out, they were chewed up, and then in a play on that unfortunate Masuaku incident, spat out. And in fact, if you have a look at this piece from the Mail, I think it might have been Martin Samuel saying this. He said, actually, you can date their exit from the FA Cup back to last Thursday, when David Moyes said in his pre-match press conference that Wigan probably wished that they'd stayed in the Premier League rather than winning the FA Cup. And that, I think, might have antagonised Hammers fans. Darren, what do you think? I mean, do you think Moyes played a risky game in saying that, or was he vindicated, or will he be vindicated?
I think he did play a risky game, but I have to say, and you're not going to hit me over the head for this, I think he was right to do so. West Ham crippled by injuries, and the brutal truth, despite all of our romance, is that it means more to a club like West Ham to stay in the Premier League than it does to win the FA Cup. The fans would love a day out, but if they don't stay in the Premier League, they lose top players, they can't attract top players, and it is so hard to get back. So in a way, I think David Moyes was right to field the side he did, but the players did not do themselves justice. They should have performed far better than they did against the side in League One.
Darren, I'll come back to you with more on transfers and a bit more about Spurs in just a short while.
Thanks, Sean.
But for now, Michelle, it seems that the Liverpool fans have got plenty to say, right?
Plenty to say. Here's what went wrong. I'll tell you, John. Let's start with Imran's comment. Well, it's a combination of both. Coutinho would have helped, but even with him, the team struggled in such games. As of now, would have taken a draw with City and 2 wins after that. Klopp will turn it around. No knee-jerk reactions, please.
Too late.
Right, let's jump on to Jeremy's comment, which is on Facebook Live. Here we go. John, the problem is Klopp. With him, it's always plan A or nothing on the pitch. It's always 4-3-3. Even when it's not working off the pitch in the summer, it was Van Dijk or nothing when there were other centre-backs available. And Victor says, it appears 75 million Van Dijk hasn't solved the defending issues just yet.
Okay, yeah, there's a couple of really good comments there. I think as far as Van Dijk is concerned, in any circumstances, you can't judge a player as quickly as this, so let's not do that. But I think that point from Jeremy, I really like there. I think Klopp needs to show a bit more tactical flexibility. As I said just a few moments ago, this high-intensity press, if it drops for any reason, it allows teams to attack your defence, and I don't care who you've got there, and even who you've got in goal. If you're under pressure, you will concede goals. But it's got you thinking. Transfers, and there are some big developments on that front when we come back.
When we come back, we take a look at the Premier League stars who could be saying goodbye to the British Isles and hola to sunnier climes. Yes, it's a whole lot of transfer talk coming up. Make sure you have your say right here, and we'll see you soon. Welcome back, and okay, let's get into some transfer window stories right now with just a couple of days to go before it all closes. Now, although the biggest stories actually over the weekend concerned, as it appeared, longer-term transfer strategies. For instance, like the Mirror exclusively reporting a £150 million move for Chelsea star Eden Hazard by Manchester City. Now, Darren will obviously be able to enlighten us further on that, given it appeared in his paper. But the essence of the piece was that City is said to view a massive bid for the 25-year-old as making more sense than the numbers involved in the Manchester United move for 29-year-old Alexis Sanchez. The major difference, obviously, though, being the fee. It's a remarkable story, not least for the effect it would have on morale at Chelsea, whose fans may also be questioning, as well as their manager, the club's ability to compete with the Manchester Giants. Also, it comes shortly after Pep Guardiola, remember, said the City couldn't afford £80 million players, but at a time when they're apparently finalising a £57 million deal for defender Aymeric Laporte. Bizarre times we live in. How likely, then, is it to happen? I mean, the Hazard thing. Well, I happen to think it's likely that Hazard will move at some stage. He's been at Chelsea for, 5.5 years now. And having spent some time around the player, I'd say this, you need to be aware, he's not massively ambitious in the sense that he loves playing football and doesn't appear to be captivated by celebrity branding, showbiz, Instagram and so on. Does he fit the Madrid model, I wonder? Or would he really leave Chelsea for another Premier League club? I think Madrid certainly see him as a big part of their proposed rebuild after their recent traumas. And if you look at this headline here, a barnstormer in the Mail, actually all it's doing is putting three previously reported threads together. Madrid targets De Gea, Hazard and Kane. We've seen those rumours separately, but to combine them obviously gives you a monstrously huge number to put in a headline, which people like these days. It's actually another strand, I think, Darren, we're going to go back to Darren Lewis in just a moment. Stories linking the former Espanyol man Mauricio Pochettino with Madrid don't seem to be going away. If Madrid, Darren, did prize him away from White Hart Lane, surely that would increase the chances of their getting hold of Kane and maybe Dele Alli as well, right?
Yeah, indeed it would do, because those players have responded well and progressed well under Mauricio Pochettino. I was at his press conference last Thursday. We asked him directly, Zidane's under pressure, would you be interested? Would it be hard for you to walk away from Spurs? And he said, look, I managed Espanyol. I could never manage Barcelona, just as I could never manage Arsenal having managed Spurs. but he did not rule out the interest from Real Madrid, and that was key. I think in terms of what you've just mentioned there, John, yes, it is the case that you could put players together and make a big story, but Real Madrid are floundering behind Barcelona. They're around about 20 points behind them in the Spanish league at the moment. They will rip up that side in the summer. And that's the reason why so many people think there'll be a change of manager and change of key players as well. Whether they get Hazard is a different matter, because City have the finance to compete with United, with the likes of Real Madrid rather. The big question is, where would a Hazard play in a City side? But if they get him, big clubs, they collect big players. So I don't think they'd really care about that, just as long as they could get someone of that caliber.
Yeah, I don't know where Hazard would play as well. It's a good point that you raised there, but what a story that would be. Just quickly, as we're sitting here looking to see what's happening with transfers as we come close to the deadline, Chelsea and Arsenal, the latter are taking an age to sort out that reported, 60-odd million for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Is that happening, or is it more to do with Dortmund wanting to get a replacement in before they can let him go? It seems to have become very complicated. Similarly, Chelsea, I'd welcome your take on that one. I was intrigued to see how things are shaping up there. It looks as if there's a headline at the weekend that was talking about Luis Enrique coming in as a replacement for Conte should he be off. But right now, obviously, Conte's talking about signings. They need to get a couple over the line. So, Darren, Chelsea and Arsenal, anything doing immediately?
I think Aubameyang will join Arsenal for £60 million. The reasons why it's taken so long is because Arsenal basically are so slow at negotiating, but Dortmund's position is clear. They want £60 million. They want compromise on that. Chelsea different, because I think as far as Chelsea are concerned, they need that target man they've been searching for so long. So many names involved in that search. Crouch, Carroll, Dzeko, the deal for him broken down. That's why Olivier Giroud could come into the picture. Dortmund wanted him on loan, but Giroud appears not to want to go there. The offer from Dortmund not good enough for Arsenal. Chelsea looking at him as an alternative. Would he go to Chelsea? Well, Cech went from Chelsea to Arsenal, didn't he? And also Chelsea were looking at Alexis Sanchez. I was at the press conference last week when Conte confirmed that. So there could well be business doing at Chelsea. But why would Hazard leave? Because Chelsea are looking at players that are not on the top shelf, if you like, not high caliber. And I think that's a big reason for why Hazard's contract talks are kind of stalling, and why the other clubs could pinch him, because Chelsea are shopping in the bargain basement. The other clubs really are shopping at the top level.
Did you ever think you'd find yourself saying that? Amazing times we live in here. Darren, thanks so much for that and for everything today. Take care and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, John. All the best.
You know, Michelle, I'll come to you in just a moment, but just as we're chatting there, I've just updated what's happening with that Aubameyang situation. It looks as if certain news sources are saying the deal is done for some 55 million for Arsenal. The key to it appears to be that Chelsea's Michy Batshuayi is going to go to Dortmund to replace the striker, and that seems to have been what they were waiting on. Just another development, Spurs look as if they are going to acquire the services of Lucas Moura, who's been out of favour at PSG, and that for me would be a great signing. What else we got on what we've been talking about?
Yeah, let's look at the Hazard speculation. So let's go to this comment from Icky on Facebook. Like, he will not move to City. He will never move to a rival club in the Premier League, but Real is a possibility. And as a Chelsea fan, I'm sure he'll be a Chelsea player at least for another season. There's more comments on that from Victor, who says for 150 million, City can do without Hazard. Probably going for Griezmann would be a more probable choice. I've got one more comment here from Sean David Lowe, and he's talking about Harry Kane. He doesn't think Harry will go to Real Madrid. He's going to be no doubt a Spurs legend for a long time by far. If anything, he could go to the Red Devils.
Yeah. Listen, I think the thing about Harry Kane is that provided everything at Spurs stays exactly the way it is, provided he remains completely invested in the rightness and the goodness of the project there, and they show quantifiable progress, fine. We did discuss the possibility of Pochettino going. Were that to happen, you could see Kane's resolve tested. Yes, Manchester United will go from strength to strength financially, and they will always be an opportunity for a player such as him to go to. On the Hazard one, Icky, I take your point. You're a Chelsea fan. You're never going to countenance Hazard going to a club within the Premier League. The numbers to me seem excessive. And you always seem to feel, if they've got to go to a Spanish giant, we'll accept that. Fascinating chat. Now, we're going to come back with some fantasy thoughts ahead of the midweek round of Premier League games.
How ready are you for this week's midweek fixtures? I am, of course, talking fantasy-wise, and if you're still umming and ahhing about your selection, stick around because Paddy from Sweeper is on the way to turn dream work into teamwork.
OK, so a 25th round of Premier League fixtures is almost upon us, and it'll be fascinating to see if some of the weekend's FA Cup team selections will be vindicated. These are the games then. They're kicking off on Tuesday with a triple header, so games at Swansea, West Ham and Huddersfield. After that, you've got the remaining 7 fixtures to be played. And you know what? I won't pick any out in particular. So obviously you're just looking really at the fixtures that will feature teams who are substantially changed at the weekend. Now, the last one on the list, obviously, Spurs-Manchester United is one that leaps out at you in terms of table-topping intrigue and importance. But of course, there are also precious fantasy Premier League points up for grabs over the next couple of days. And to that end, there are a couple of clubs and players you might want to pay particular attention to. Here with some more thoughts on that is Paddy Von Bear of the fantasy newsletter The Sweeper. Paddy, good to see you again. I'm liking the look of Stoke right now, given their form and their opponents this midweek. Are you?
I am, yes. There's always one or two lesser clubs slightly where value can be found across the league, and Stoke's quite a good one. I personally will be looking to Xherdan Shaqiri this week to fill the gap left by Marko Arnautovic's injury, which I know will probably have hit a few managers. So that's an early tip for you. But yeah, Stoke generally, I know they've got that fullback Moritz Bauer has signed in January, and he's looked pretty adventurous up that right flank. And generally going forward, there are just a few options at lesser prices that can sort of help you maybe free up some extra funds to start bringing in people like Sergio Aguero and Alexis Sanchez. Obviously, you can't have all the big guns at the same time, but someone like Bauer is certainly going to help. There's also been another significant injury. I mentioned Arnautovic, but Leroy Sané's just got himself injured on Sunday. I say got himself injured. It was a pretty horrible tackle from Joe Bennett of Cardiff. But in terms of replacing him, I think you're looking at guys like, if you can afford the spare change, well, perhaps by freeing some up with a couple of Stoke players, the likes of, Raheem Sterling, Riyad Mahrez has been very good recently, and possibly Paul Pogba. You mentioned that Spurs United game. I can see United obviously becoming a much more significant attacking threat now that Sanchez comes into the team. He should slot straight in. Could cause problems for Jesse Lingard owners. We're not sure how that team's going to shape up, but Pogba's pretty fixture-proof and pretty rotation-proof in that side, and he's picked up plenty of assists recently, so he's a pretty safe bet, I'd say.
Paddy, you've mentioned obviously Alexis Sanchez, one of the most high-profile moves in this January window so far. But there are, of course, plenty of other new faces. Walcott made a good start at Everton, and there are others who've come in. Any that catch your eye?
Yeah, it's always difficult with new signings. You kind of want to preach a bit of caution because you're never sure how they're going to settle in. Sanchez is a fairly easy one because we know he's really top of the game and pretty prolific in fantasy Premier League over the past few seasons. Walcott's one of those, a bit like, you'd put him in the same category as someone like Aaron Lennon, who's joined Burnley. You know what he's capable of, and if he puts together a nice run of form, you want to be there pretty early. But I'd probably avoid for now similar Mkhitaryan at Arsenal. As we saw at the start of the season, capable of plenty of points. With those new signings, you just want to sort of pop them on the watch list for now, and if you see one or two taking performances back to back in the league, then it's your time to pounce and then pick them up.
Right, Paddy, two things very quickly. Who's your captain this midweek? And secondly, how do our viewers get more of these words of wisdom from you?
Well, the captain choice is tough. If I had Aguero, I think I'd be leaning to him. In his absence, it may be Sterling. Obviously, with Sané's injury, he's guaranteed to play now, and they've West Brom at home, so that's pretty safe. Ditto, Mohamed Salah would be a pretty safe option, and you can always rely on Kane if you need to. I think I'll be going with Sterling, but it's a tough choice. And yes, if you want to sign up for the sweeper, it's totally free, and it is at thetimes.co.uk/fantasy football. You get a weekly email from us full of tips and hopefully helpful.
And great tips they are. Paddy, thank you very much. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Joe.
Michelle, more feedback in a moment. Just quickly, a few people have asked me for my thoughts on Spurs against Manchester United. All I'll say on that one is, does Jose Mourinho, now he's got more attacking options, turn up with an attacking team away against a Big Six side? If he does, they've got a chance of winning it. But it's Jose Mourinho. That's all I'm going to say. What do the viewers say?
Well, let's talk about VAR. Let's switch things up a bit, because Juginda thought it was spot on during the Liverpool-West Brom game, and he made an interesting point. He said when the automobile first came out, I wonder how many of those people using horse-drawn carriages must have said it won't work, and we know how that turned out. The question is, how do we incorporate the technology to improve the quality and enjoyment of it?
All right. It's a fundamental one, this one, and I honestly believe that you either are somebody who says the game will be better if we make it better, or you're somebody who says I take the game for all of its flaws as well as its perfection. And I don't think that's ever going to change. That's the eternal debate. Can you impose that upon the game, or is football organic? Anyway.
Quick couple on Hazard. We've got, so let's go to Syed's. I fancy Man City going all out for Hazard. And then on the opposing side, we've got Julian Dalton asking, why would Hazard move to City? Chelsea are just capable of winning what City can win.
And that, in a nutshell, is it. Those are the two halves of that particular argument. A Chelsea fan's never going to countenance it. It would strike at the very heart of Chelsea if they had to accept that City's more likely to win things than they are these days, and they're not going to do that, are they? Look, we could go on all night, but I'll jump onto Facebook and answer a few more questions. Michelle, thank you for handling all of that. We'll be back very soon. See ya.